Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening to you. It's Friday, June 17th. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. Tonight, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department is taking a new step aimed at reducing the high number of in-custody deaths. As KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado shows us, jail inmates are now getting access to medication that can reduce overdoses.
So far this year, 10 inmates have died in San Diego County jails, a number that is among the highest of any jail system in the state. So high, the state auditor issued a report in February calling that record concerning and recommending sweeping changes. It's a record Sheriff Tony Ray says he's trying to change.
We're trying to do everything we can to make our jails as safe as possible. You know, we don't want to be known as the people where you go and pass away.
And that's why starting today, naloxone will now be easily accessible to inmates and found in all common areas of the jails, along with instructions on how to use it. The prescription nasal spray is commonly known by its brand name Narcan, and it reverses the effects of an opioid overdose.
It's not medical treatment, but it stops that until we can get a medical treatment in.
Since 2020, deputies have carried the medication with them in the jails.
We've saved a number of lives. Since January 1st of 2020, I believe the current number is 396 people. 396 people that we've contacted that have gone down, we've been able to revive with the use of Narcan and naloxone.
It's a great day for the folks who are under the care and custody of the Sheriff's Department.
Paul Parker is the executive officer with the County Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board, the civilian oversight board that has been calling for this action for years. He says many of the people who have died in custody were not convicted or sentenced.
Any one of us, you or me, we could wind up in county jail tonight for something that we didn't do, and certainly for something that we're not convicted of.
He says continued cooperation between their organization and the Sheriff's Department will save lives and spare other families heartache.
Thank you for implementing our recommendation to Sheriff Ray, to Under Sheriff Martinez, to Assistant Sheriff Adams Hyder. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for implementing those recommendations. More importantly, to the families of folks who have died. I've talked to many of you. I'm obviously sorry for the death of those that are your loved ones.
Shane Harris with the People's Association of Justice says this is a positive first step.
Certainly these families, many of them need to be heard more and more by the county sheriff. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. It's a step, but it's one step for too many steps that need to be taken and far too late.
Ray says making this possible took a lot of research, including visiting jails where inmates have access. While he didn't have the information about what that costs, he says it's worth it.
You can't put a price on a person's life. I mean, one person's life is worth way more than any of the money we've spent trying to put medical equipment here and there.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
As the U.S. Senate struggles to agree on gun safety legislation, yet another act of violence rocks a community. 2 people are dead and a third wounded following a shooting at a church outside Birmingham, Alabama. Chris Nguyen has the latest on the investigation and what some in Congress hope to accomplish before the July 4th recess.
Outside Birmingham, Alabama, a deadly shooting adds to the gun violence plaguing the country, this time in a house of worship.
Vestavia Hills is a close-knit, resilient, loving community.
Police say the shooting happened during a potluck at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church Thursday, leaving 2 elderly people dead and a third in the hospital. The 71-year-old suspect occasionally attended the church and is now in custody, according to police.
Another attendee at the event subdued the suspect and held him down until law enforcement arrived.
This follows recent deadly mass shootings at a California church, a Texas elementary school, and a New York supermarket. On Capitol Hill, Senate negotiators are scrambling to hammer out legislative text for a bipartisan gun deal.
We cannot go back home over the course of July 4th and tell people that once again we let politics get in the way of getting something done.
Key sticking issues include funding for state red flag laws and denying firearms to unmarried partners convicted of domestic violence.
We got to settle these issues, or else we're talking about jeopardizing our ability to deal with legislation next week.
Meanwhile, in Alabama,
there are public safety concerns that we have to take into account.
An urgent call from some as this community tries to heal.
I think it just goes to show that no community is immune from this kind of gun violence.
Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
California could become the first state to require gun owners to buy liability insurance. It would cover the negligent or accidental use of their firearms. A state bill is being modeled after a requirement in the city of San Jose. The state of New York is also considering similar legislation. The executive director of Gun Owners of California argues no insurance company will cover the misuse of a firearm, and he says such a requirement infringes on gun owners' constitutional rights. It was approved by the San Diego City Council unanimously on Monday, and tonight the city officially has a new budget. Surrounded by almost the entire city council, Mayor Todd Gloria signed the spending plan this morning. The $5 billion budget allocates more money for infrastructure than ever before. Nearly $350 million for phase 1 of the Pure Water project, which, when complete, will provide a third of the city's water needs. $343 million to upgrade and repair existing water and sewer infrastructure, and nearly $90 million to repave streets and to fix sidewalks. And the mayor says the budget also invests heavily in public safety.
We care deeply about your quality of life, and we want you to feel safe and secure in your neighborhood, no matter which neighborhood you live in. We're doing this by fully funding our public safety services, our police officers, our firefighters, and our lifeguards.
The budget also includes money to fund the city's first chief behavioral health officer to assist paramedics with people in need of mental health services. The Environmental Protection Agency wants public input on a $630 million plan to fix the region's cross-border pollution problems. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has more.
Federal officials have completed a draft environmental impact review, and they're seeking public comment. The agency is recommending a plan to bolster capture and treatment of sewage-tainted flows on both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border.
The comprehensive solution is sort of a document that's informing our environmental review.
The projects are meant to keep sewage-tainted flows out of the ocean. The EPA's Doug Eberhardt called the draft document an important step.
Now we've evaluated a set of alternatives, different ways of addressing the problem, and we're now looking at what are the environmental ramifications of those various alternatives.
The environmental review is expected to be finalized in the fall. Once complete, federal officials could begin designing the projects. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
It's been a long process, but we're one step closer to getting the nation's youngest kids access to COVID-19 vaccinations. Today, the Food and Drug Administration officially approved emergency use for Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines for kids at least 6 months old. The move still needs approval from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's supposed to happen tomorrow. It's expected to pass, as CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky has already signed off on the recommendation. Juneteenth celebrations are being held all weekend long across San Diego County and the U.S., marking the official end of slavery. KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayers shows us some of the local events.
Music, free food, and more at San Diego State University Friday, as the school held its first official Juneteenth celebration. SDSU's Tanika During-Green helped to organize the event.
We're celebrating it on campus for the first time. We have business vendors here from our community, also from our SDSU community. We have departments across SDSU's campus who are tabling to share more about our cultural centers here on campus. We have food vendors and food trucks, and just students across campus as well as families enjoying the event.
Officially, Juneteenth is on June 19th, celebrating the day the last remaining black slaves in the Confederacy were emancipated. It's considered the oldest observed African-American holiday in the country. The SDSU event was just one of those marking the day in San Diego. There was also a flag raising at San Diego Unified School District's headquarters. Superintendent Lamont Jackson was on hand.
The fact that we have not had a federal holiday celebrating the end of slavery until 2021 does indicate, as I said, the work that we have to do, and we can do it in public education.
And students spoke about what Juneteenth means to them.
Juneteenth for me is represents freedom, but that freedom only goes so far. Because till this day, we're still fighting for our freedom, fighting to get justice in this world, and fighting for to have the same equal rights as another white man walking the street. Juneteenth is for all the African Americans who put their life on the line to get us where we are today.
There are other Juneteenth events planned around the county through the weekend and on Monday, when the holiday is observed by the federal government. We've got links to some of those events on our website, kpbs.org. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
The televised January 6th hearings can bring to mind the televised hearings of the Watergate investigation. Both chapters in U.S. history centered on an alleged abuse of presidential power and put American democracy to the test. This week marks the 50th anniversary of the break-in that started the 1970s scandal. Karen Kaifa looks at how Washington is looking back.
As Washington hosts a series of high-profile hearings, this month marks the 50th anniversary of the beginning of another dark chapter in U.S. political history.
Well, I'm not a crook.
On June 17, 1972, police arrested 5 burglars at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington's Watergate complex. One of them, a security consultant for then Republican President Richard Nixon's re-election committee. The White House dismissed it as, quote, a third-rate burglary. But the event set off more than 2 years of investigations. The long scandal tagged as Watergate.
It basically unraveled as reporters dug into what happened.
Before it was synonymous with scandal, Watergate was synonymous with style. After opening in the 1960s, the complex became a coveted address for members of Congress and White House higher-ups, boasting rooftop views of the nation's capital.
It was the place where to be in Washington, D.C. on the 60s and 70s, right? A lot of shakers and movers.
Today, at the still stylish Watergate Hotel, one can check into the room used as a home base by G. Gordon Liddy and E. Howard Hunt, former Nixon aides who helmed the 1972 break-in. The hotel rechristened the room the Scandal Suite in 2017, the hallway lined with Nixon-era headlines and retro decor that nods to the event. Managing Director Manuel Martinez says the room piques interest, even if just for a glimpse behind the door year-round.
A lot of customers want to be here and really see with their own eyes where was the break-in happening, and that happened here at the Watergate Hotel in Washington.
A current exhibition at Washington's National Portrait Gallery looks at Watergate through the artist's lens.
The portraits helped people understand at the moment what was happening in the Watergate scandal.
Curator Kate Clark LeMay says illustrations like this 1973 Time magazine cover art by Jack Davis provided a shortcut to understand the complex developments uncovered by the journalism of the time.
There is quite a dynamic of, pointing the blame at someone else, which pretty much captures what happened during the accusations and the cover-up of the Watergate break-in.
The Watergate scandal led to its own set of widely televised congressional hearings during the summer of 1973. Nixon resigned in August 1974 after the House Judiciary Committee approved 3 articles of impeachment. The scandal changing Americans' perception of Washington, but also showing what U.S. democracy can endure. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the European Union signals Ukraine might be allowed to join its ranks. What the move means for the war-torn nation. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It hasn't exactly been friendly skies lately for the airline industry. Today, more than 1,000 domestic flights were canceled due to storms along the East Coast. Carriers have also been dealing with other problems since the pandemic, including staffing. Union reps for Southwest Airlines pilots say there aren't enough pilots to handle June's schedule. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg spoke with airline executives and asked them to try to keep summer cancellations to a minimum. More than 2,700 flights were scrapped during the Memorial Day weekend. American paychecks are climbing faster than ever, but thanks to inflation, it feels like workers all got handed a pay cut. Moody's Analytics says the average U.S. consumer is now spending about $460 more per month compared to the amount paid for the same services at this time last year. Analysts say although many workers are seeing their wages rise at a pace not seen in decades, consumer prices have basically nullified those gains. Those of us with credit cards and other loans will have to pay a bit extra after this week's interest hike. SDSU's Miro Kopik explains how the move is designed to bring down inflation elsewhere in the Friday Business Report.
This is the right move by the Fed to really slow down kind of consumer demand and economic growth to kind of bring inflation back into line. What the Fed is trying to do is really walk a tightrope and bringing the economy back into a soft landing. So their goal in increasing rates, and they're going to continue to do so. They're going to continue to increase rates through the end of the year. And they're going to expect the overall Fed funds rate to be about 3.4% by December. That should be enough of a break to slow down kind of burning consumer demand. And so what they're trying to engineer, and one of the concerns and why the market dropped so much yesterday, is because now businesses are thinking, well, there may be a recession in 12 to 18 months. And it's the Fed's objective not to put the economy in recession. It's to slow it down just enough so we can have a relatively soft landing and then allow the economy to pick back up again without a major negative disruption.
It's been a little cooler today in some places, and that cooling trend will continue through Saturday, but we'll also experience some very strong and gusty winds across the mountains and the deserts. And then if you're looking for warming, it does arrive back in the picture as we look to Sunday, and even more so by the time we get to Monday. But as we've been going on through the day today and continue through this evening, we still have wind advisories at play for Borrego Springs all the way down to Pound Valley, and also points a little bit to the south and east. For tonight, though, mostly cloudy skies. We've been talking about that marine layer and how those clouds will be thickening, especially into those evening hours, so that will hold temperatures in the lower 60s. And then further inland you go with that less cloud coverage and with that cooling trend, you're looking at 40s, dropping down to that for Ramona, 59 for El Cajon, 57 for Escondido, Oceanside 59. Borrego Springs even falling back to some mid-60s, and cooler across Mount Laguna, about 55 degrees. So this is the trough that we've been talking about, an area of low pressure that would be swinging down across the southwest. So again, it's going to be much cooler across areas of the Great Basin, across the Four Corners. Look for some thunderstorm activity to start to develop, which could create some heavy rain at times. Across the coast, though, clearing throughout the day on Saturday. A few clouds may kind of dive in back across the area later on your Saturday evening for San Diego, Chula Vista. Other than that, you'll note that everyone's feeling a slightly cooler, even Chula Vista only getting to 67 for tomorrow's high. But the warming trend, it does take place for everyone. I said more so on Monday, and you can see that it's relevant there around the coastal areas and getting up to the upper 70s by midweek. And then for your Saturday and Sunday, so you're seeing that warming trend once again inland. You're back to the 80s by Monday across the mountains, back to the 70s by Monday. A little bit of some cooling for the desert, if you want to call that cooling, for Saturday and Sunday. Back to triple-digit heat by Monday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Michelle Rotella.
San Diego's Roman Catholic Diocese has made some big headlines over the past few weeks. First, its leader was tapped by Pope Francis to become a cardinal, passing over more senior and more conservative Catholic clergy. Then, San Diego's auxiliary bishop was chosen to become bishop of the Diocese of Phoenix, replacing a more conservative bishop there. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has a look at the changes.
Bishop Robert McElroy himself said he never imagined this could happen, a once-in-a-lifetime appointment.
And not a clue that this was being contemplated or even possible.
To many San Diegans, a good surprise.
And we announced it at church at all the masses. Everybody rejoiced and clapped. So it was fantastic. It was good news.
That's Pastor Peter Navarra of St. Joseph's Cathedral in downtown San Diego. He says for those who understand the hierarchy of the church, this election is very out of the norm.
Yes, that kind of surprised me because he broke the format, the tradition. And choosing Bishop McElroy, who is not an archbishop, he's the Bishop of San Diego, and that made it more special because San Diego is now in the map.
And weeks after McElroy's selection, Pope Francis again turned to San Diego to elevate another church leader.
Please join me in welcoming Bishop John Dolan.
Auxiliary Bishop John Dolan will leave San Diego in August to take over the Phoenix Diocese, replacing a retiring bishop known for being ultra-conservative.
These are exciting and unpredictable and wild days for San Diego.
Michael Lovett Collier is the head of mission integration at the University of San Diego. He says two like-minded leaders being placed in high-ranking positions in the church has significant implications, but that change started with Pope Francis.
The earthquake was Pope Francis. The aftershocks are people like Bishop Dolan being elevated to bishop or Bishop McElroy becoming a cardinal. 10, 15 years ago, somebody like Bishop Dolan most likely would not have been made the bishop of his own diocese.
Just days before he was named Bishop of Phoenix, we spoke with Dolan about McElroy's selection as a cardinal. He addressed some of the criticism from hardliners, saying much like Pope Francis, McElroy will lead with his heart.
So it isn't that he is trying to be conservative or liberal. He's really trying to focus on being a person who communicates at all times without drawing a line in the sand, because that never really helps.
McElroy and church insiders say part of the reason he was selected was because of his work on three issues that are near to Pope Francis's heart: immigration, inclusion, and the environment. McElroy will be the only cardinal on the West Coast and in a border city. Father Patrick Murphy runs Casa del Migrante, a nonprofit shelter for migrants across the border in Tijuana. He says McElroy's is a voice that's needed in Rome.
I think that's very strong symbolism on the part of Pope Francis, because he has this phrase, reaching out to people on the peripheries. And being at the border is being in the peripheries.
Women have long been on the periphery of church leadership, but McElroy made changes by appointing Maria Olivia Galvan as the first woman chancellor and director for pastoral ministries in the diocese.
That is something that we're starting to see more and more throughout the nation, but it's far from being a reality. He's a visionary.
And environmental activists like Mitch Silverstein from the Surfrider Foundation say having allies in positions of leadership matters.
Having people in leadership positions in the Catholic faith, in every sector of our society who are environmentalists and who can speak to their followers in a language that makes sense to them, I think is just crucial to all of us uniting to save our planet.
Ultimately, Lovett Collier says this type of pastoral leadership will help usher in a new generation who have not seen themselves or their friends accepted in the church.
People in those roles who operate in that way, who have those qualities, are often seen, especially by young people, as incredibly relevant and credible and authentic witnesses. And therefore, they're very effective in attracting people either to pay attention to the church in a new way or maybe even to get involved in it in a deeper way.
McElroy will travel to Rome in August, where he will be installed by Pope Francis. Then he will return to San Diego to continue his work with the new title of Cardinal. Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Looking to catch a movie this weekend? KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando recommends two new releases at Digital Gym Cinema.
Stop-motion
Stop-motion animation requires physically manipulating objects in tiny increments between individually photographed frames. It takes patience and skill, but filmmaker Phil Tippett says,
to mere mortals, it's like watching grass grow.
But Tippett is no mere mortal. The Oscar-winning effects artist is the mad god behind the film Mad God, and making it took a toll on him.
Not unlike Captain Ahab and Moby Dick, and I went down with the whale, ended up for a few days in a psych ward and then recovery for about 6 weeks.
The film is a wordless tale of a descent into hell. It's a fever dream that combines madness, chaos, despair, and beauty.
It's the illusion of a dream wherein you pack so much information into a 4-second shot. It's impossible to absorb all that information. And then when the next shot comes up, the previous one evaporates, because now there's so much more to behold.
The end result is something bleak and dark, but also gorgeously seductive in its meticulous craftsmanship. More bold visionary work is on display in Neptune Frost. Directed by poet Saul Williams and Rwandan filmmaker Anisia Uziman, Neptune Frost is billed as an Afrofuturist musical.
I would say that the term Afrofuturism has been a helpful tool for people to kind of learn how to articulate what they're experiencing when they are experiencing a film that is projecting ideas of a Black experience that is not necessarily related to the oppressive or colonial or imperialistic past.
Neptune Frost is a cinematic poem that provides a radically different and visually stunning window on the Black experience.
And so to see a story that is celebrating Black skin and Black joy while also dancing through our relationship to technology and showing this sense of power that our characters are stepping into, I think can be a divine illumination for any Western viewer.
Neptune Frost and Mad God are the kinds of film that just make me giddy with excitement about the potential of cinema. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll. Have a great weekend.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.